we've talked about selection, we've talked about leadership, we've talked about performance management, and this in the next in this series we're looking at coaching. So this again is really core to a lot of the work that we're doing anyway. So without further ado, let me hand over to James, who again is very key in the strategy in this area for Strengths Partnership. He's the co-founder and managing director here. He's going to sort of walk you through this slide deck, and yeah, I'll hand over to you, James.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If you can't hear me, just let me know. So what we're going to cover off today, you can see there. First of all, what is meant by a positive culture and the value of a strong culture. Secondly, obviously looking at how strengths coaching can change company values, company culture, and create more positive workplaces. Also, we're going to explore strengths-based coaching tools and techniques and just give you a little bit of an overview of those. Then we're going to go on to look at creating a scalable coaching model. How do organizations actually scale coaching beyond one-on-one executive coaching? And then finally, learning from case studies. And we'll share two case studies in particular with you, and just share some learning from those as well. So first of all, let's look at some of the limiting assumptions out there about coaching. First of all, a lot of people still regard coaching, so this is sort of human resources practitioners and people working into organizations as consultants and coaches. They're still seeing coaching as very much an individual process, a one-on-one process, often delivered by executive coaches, in other words, delivered by experts. Also, the focus is very much still, unfortunately, on the coach being presented with an individual that they regard as needing fixing, needing some help to overcome some problems and issues. And often, of course, that's what the HR brief is, or the sponsored brief to the executive coach going in, that this person needs to be sorted out, this person needs to be fixed. Fortunately, that is shifting now, and we are seeing more of an emphasis on coaching for peak performance. So this is the good to great coaching. So there is a little bit of a shift, but still, as I say, there's a lot of remedial coaching going on, and also when the coach, the exec coach, or the coach approaches the coaching, if you want, task. There's often, the assumption that that the person has problems, issues, and is in need of fixing. Finally, the focus up until now has really been on measuring changes in coaching behavior. Sorry, the coachee behavior. So the individual being coached, the client being coached. It's about measuring their level of satisfaction with coaching. It's about measuring also the level of shift in their behavior from the coaching. And that's been regarded typically as more important than changes in business performance indicators. So there still is this notion that if the coach is happy, then the coaching is successful, rather than looking at some of the longer term impact measures, business impact measures of the coaching. And this is something that many coaches still haven't really nailed, and it's something that we feel is in need of addressing moving forward. So there's more of a balance there. But if we look at cultural change, and we're talking about cultural change through coaching here, as Edgar Schein himself, probably the leading cultural organizational cultural guru, says, business cultural change cannot happen through one-on-one coaching. The reason is because culture happens at a group level in organizations, and therefore individual one-on-one coaching is not necessarily going to change the culture in of itself, although leadership coaching, as we'll see later, plays a key role. One-on-one leadership coaching can play a key role in shifting cultures. So that's important to remember. When we talk about culture change, we talk about systemic whole organization change and creating different dialogues across the whole organization. But what is important, obviously, if we're talking about culture change, is just to define culture. So what is culture? Culture, this definition by Katzenbach and Harshak, a set of deeply embedded, self-reinforcing behaviors, beliefs, and mindsets that determine how we do things around here. So, you know, there's many levels to culture. There's the more observable levels, and then obviously there's the more implicit levels to culture. But it's really important to understand that it's really about the beliefs that people hold, the mindsets that shape their behavior, and of course how they behave. So that's really what culture is all about. And clearly, as we know, as many of you will know, culture is pretty complex and can't be shifted overnight. It takes you know, weeks, months, and often years to shift cultures of organizations. But culture, of course, does matter, and it's really important. There's been a lot of research. Some of the research has been done by the big consulting firms, including Booz & Company, Hay, PwC, and so on. And what they found is that if you look at research by Booz & Company from 26 companies looking at performance against culture, they found that Booz & Company found that culture at its very best can enable, energize, and enhance performance. And at its worst, of course, it can be a real drag on productivity and performance, and obviously lead to deterioration of engagement and motivation in the workforce. Hay found something similar. They found that where companies have really good cultures, that can result in engaged employees, which of course results in increased retention, the ability to attract A players as well to the organization, which in turn, of course, leads to customer satisfaction, and in turn that leads to revenue growth. And of course, there's been a whole lot of work done around the service profit chain, where, you know, if you have engaged employees, they will then obviously make your customers happier, more delighted, and that in turn will result in better financial performance. So the bottom line is that a strategy's effectiveness depends largely on cultural alignment and having a strong culture. And this notion, which I'm sure you've all heard of before, that culture trumps strategy every time. And the reason why I think that is the case is because while strategies evolve and change, and can change quite considerably, cultures don't change that quickly, and they're enduring. They're the kind of organizational glue that kind of holds things together. So, for example, a company like Apple, you know, can change its whole product range and could even change its strategy. The culture, you know, is going to be the thing that kind of helps it move into that new era. Yeah, it's really important to understand the importance of culture in terms of performance and engagement of employees, and why it matters. When culture changes is particularly important in our experience are when there's significant changes happening, especially in the external environment. So, for example, when you have things like mergers and acquisitions, or you have changing competitive dynamics in the environment, or alternatively, when you have some internal changes, like, for instance, the top leadership team decides that a change of strategy is necessary, or alternatively, you know, when you've got, for instance, more of an emphasis on innovation, the need to up the pace of innovation in the organization to keep up with the competition or surpass the competition, and of course also to make sure you're improving engagement and to attract and retain key talent. So these are some of the reasons which would put culture change very high up on the list of organizational priorities. And in fact, if you look at mergers and acquisitions, a lot of research has shown that about a third of mergers and acquisitions, and some research is suggesting even more, the success of mergers and acquisitions is very dependent on getting the culture right and making sure that the cultures are integrated in the right way. And when that doesn't happen, then the mergers and acquisitions are likely to fail. And as I say, the figure that's been put on the failure rate associated with lack of cultural integration is about a third of mergers and acquisitions which fail because of lack of cultural integration. So a lot of organizations at the moment are looking at how to create a more positive culture to really engage their people. If you want a positive culture model that many organizations are aspiring to now, it really comprises the kind of the following sort of key aspects. First of all, a real positive mindset, and that's really where employees are very much focused around solutions, possibilities, opportunities, as opposed to issues, blockers, and problems. So, it's really important that employees, come to work with a positive mindset, a can-do mindset, and focus on, the organization's vision and getting things done in line with the organization's vision. Secondly, organizations that have a positive culture typically enable their employees to play to their strengths and leverage fully their strengths. So it's really these are the organizations that help their employees identify their strengths and help them put their strengths to work every day so they can do their best work every day. Then organizations that are creating positive cultures are really valuing their people. So all the organizations that do this really well, whether it's an organization like a Deloitte or an organization like McDonald's or Innocent, some of these organizations, what they do is they really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that people feel recognized, they feel appreciated, they feel valued for the work that they do. And they do things like, they have kind of recognition awards, and they have lots of praise and positive feedback and so on to help people move from the good to the great. There's a very strong focus in organizations that do build a positive culture with an execution focus. These organizations get things done, they create a virtuous cycle of success, and they have a very, very strong discipline around implementation and seeing things through and getting things done. So that's really kind of another key aspect of a very positive culture. Also, these organizations create communities of learning, communities of knowledge sharing, social also kind of communities so that people can get their social needs met. So that's what's meant by going viral. They create networked organizations where people can share, they can work together, they can learn together, they can collaborate together, and even things like creating the right sort of workspace is really important in these organizations. And a lot of tech organizations do this really well, actually, like like the Googles and the Facebooks and so on. This is another facet that a lot of people sort of sometimes lose sight of, which is that very positive cultures are very externally customer-centric cultures. So they spend the majority of their energy and their time and their effort looking outside the organization and finding ways to delight the customer and get to know the customer better, identify new trends in terms of product solutions and so on. So that customer centricity, that focus on putting the customer first is really, really important. I remember when I was at Novo Nordisk Pharmaceuticals, one of the organizations I regard as having one of the most positive and powerful cultures, and it creates lots and lots of value in terms of shareholder value for the organization and stakeholder value as well, is they've got a very strong focus on the patient. So Novo Nordisk, they're the world's leading diabetes care organization, and when I was there, they actually took all employees through a program which was all about getting to know the diabetic patient, and they had 35,000 people around the world all having exposure to diabetic patients, and a lot of the senior managers had to actually live like diabetes patients for a whole week. So this was obviously a clear way of developing this patient, in their case, or in most cases for organizations, customer centricity, putting the customer first. And then last but not least, organizations that generally have a positive culture have a very clear sense of purpose, a shared sense of purpose, and that's cascaded right down throughout the organization. So they know why they're there, they know what value they're creating for customers and shareholders and society in general, and that's crystal clear. Of course, Simon Sinek in Start With The Why talks about the importance of the why before the what and the how, and the why is all about a clear sense of purpose. Why are we doing this? Why does it matter? So these are some of the things, as I say, some of the, if you want, the characteristics of positive cultures when we're thinking about coaching in an organization that we can look to incorporate. So in terms of moving back to coaching then, and how we actually deploy coaching to change cultures, what's really important is to look at these three key pillars. First of all, make sure that you have a clear talent and coaching strategy and a clear coaching model, which we're going to look at shortly. Secondly, to make sure that that's aligned with the organizational culture change objectives. So what are you trying to achieve in terms of organizational culture change, and how can the talent and coaching strategy drive that? And then third, lastly but not least, is the coaching infrastructure. So ensuring you've got the right infrastructure which is fit for purpose for delivering that culture change through the organization. By the way, there's the middle picture there is of an organization called Zappos. Many of you may have come across this organization. It was purchased by Amazon, the world's leading shoe retailer, and they've got a fabulous culture, which is a very positive culture, and all those principles that we talked about earlier, those attributes we talked about earlier, are very much kind of pervasive in the Zappos culture, even still today. So why choose strengths-based coaching then, and how is that going to help you to bring about culture change and bring about a more positive, appreciative culture? Well, strengths-based coaching is very specifically focused around creating an appreciative relationship, which helps the individual team or group find ways to achieve success by stretching strengths, reducing performance risks, and improving the way they learn. So it's really all about helping people to optimize their strengths, to be at their best more of the time, but also to shift their mindset, their attitudes, to become more positive, more solution-focused, more focused around opportunities. So it's if you want, targeted around creating more positivity in the organization, but also it doesn't ignore some of the performance risks, and we'll talk more about that shortly. So just a little bit more about the strengths-based approach to coaching. It uses a non-directive, solution-based approach. It positively stretches people to inspire challenge and learning, and we know through a lot of research that people are at their best when they're positively challenged, particularly in areas of strength as opposed to in areas of weakness. People like to be challenged, they like to be stretched, but it's important to get that level of challenge and stretch right. Then also it does convey a very strong positive belief in the person, and this is really important in the sense that, again, there's been a lot of research around self-fulfilling prophecy, the Pygmalion effect, which shows that when leaders, line managers, coaches have positive expectations of the people that they're coaching, those people are by and large likely to live up to those positive expectations, whereas when they've got negative expectations, low expectations, people will live down to those expectations, and that reverse effect has also been called the Gollum effect by the researchers. Gollum, obviously, from Lord of the Rings. Finally, last but not least, the whole approach of strengths coaching, it aims to build hope, optimism, self-efficacy, and resilience, and research shows that that's exactly what it does. So Fred Luthans from University of Nebraska has named these kind of aspects psychological capital. So strength coaching is really very well placed to build psychological capital and help people to be more hopeful, more optimistic, more have more self-efficacy, which is really about self-confidence, and the capability to deliver the goals. And then resilience as well, obviously, which is about the ability to bounce back from setbacks and learn and grow through those setbacks as well. This is just kind of another way of showing that to you. So I'm not going to talk too much about this. Suffice it to say that if you engage in strengths coaching, it's likely to release energy, ideas, and solutions. So you've got that whole kind of virtuous cycle that's created from strengths awareness, moving around to a positive mindset, more productive behaviors, solution idea generation, and then of course high levels of performance and better performance outcomes. Which at a macro level, if you look at a whole organization level, results in this very positive chain reaction. We've spoken a little bit about the service profit chain. We've developed that theory, that research, into what we call the strength service profit chain. So if we optimize, and leaders and managers throughout the organization are optimizing the strengths of their people, that's likely to fuel engagement about 73%, which in turn is likely to improve customer loyalty, but about 44%, which of course in turn is likely to increase profitability, innovation, shareholder value, competitive advantage, and so on. So it creates a a chain reaction there, very positive chain reaction if one focuses on strength, solutions, possibilities throughout the organization. Let's just look at some of the strengths briefly, the strengths coaching techniques. First of all, the concept of flow is really important in strengths coaching, which is really kind of matching up the strengths and the skills that people have to the level of, if you want, challenge of the task or the activity that they engaged with. And what's really important is, and there's been a lot of research around this by a chap called Csikszentmihalyi, who found that where people are in states of flow, their performance is a lot higher, they achieve their best possible performance. And so what I think the challenge is for us as human resources professionals and coaches and so on is to help people remain in flow more of the time. Clearly they can't be in flow all of the time, but to remain in flow more of the time. And we can do that through, first of all, checking that the activity and task really plays their strengths, and they have the skill to undertake the activity and task, but also the level of challenge is appropriate for them. And the only way that we can establish that is through regular conversation and checking in with them around that. Secondly, improving optimism. Optimism can be learned, optimism can be developed over time, and the way it can be developed is through helping people to think about what's worked really well in the past, who they can call on as well to help them moving forward, and then to get them to reflect on sort of positive kind of experiences. So there's all sorts of techniques and tools that we use in our coaching to improve optimism. Reducing performance risks is really about helping people understand their performance risks first of all, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, and then obviously putting in place, not ignoring those performance risks, but putting in place specific strategies to deal with those performance risks. Accentuating positive emotions is really important, and I think in coaching this is really important, whether it's team coaching or individual coaching, that the coach first of all engages in a lot of kind of positive emotion themselves, but then also helps the coaching client recognize the value of positive emotion to high performance, and focuses, for instance, on things like successes, possibilities, opportunities, helps the person reframe where they've got negative perceptions, where maybe they've had some setbacks and they've got kind of low levels of self-confidence, they're feeling disappointment, they're feeling anger, they're feeling frustration. So how can those, if you want, those negative emotions be turned into more positive, more productive emotions? It's not to say that negative emotions don't serve a purpose, because they help us to survive, to get through things, but ultimately what's going to help us to develop, grow, learn are going to be the positive emotions. And there's been a lot of work, and we can send you some of the research by a lady called Barbara Fredrickson around this whole area of positive emotion. Then strengthening self-efficacy and self-esteem. So this is really about ensuring that people have a lot of encouragement, a lot of recognition for progress, even if it's just sort of small improvements, but also making sure that people are getting positive feedback from their colleagues and from others in terms of their strengths, not just about risk areas and weaker areas, which is often the case in organizations. That they also engage in reflective journaling, so when they do something well, they can record it and reflect on it. You find that perfectionists, people who have a high achievement drive, they tend to be pretty hard on themselves, so they don't always engage in those sorts of practices. So these sorts of practices can really help in the coaching process. And then conveying positive expectations as well. We've talked about that self-fulfilling prophecy and the power of that. And of course, finding stretch opportunities, whether it's within the individual's role or outside the role, to help them stretch and take their performance to the next level. We talked a little bit about this. I'm not going to say too much more about this, but the strengths coach works on two different areas. First of all, optimizing productive habits and the underpinning strengths, experience, knowledge around those. Also, of course, the emotions we talked about, so the positive emotions and the negative emotions as well. And then the strengths coach is also looking at reducing performance risks. So the strengths coach is looking at these three areas of risk, which are very important. Strengths and overdrive, so what happens when the strengths tip over and create unintended negative consequences. So that's when the strengths are used in the wrong way, the wrong time, the wrong amount. Limiting weaknesses, or weaknesses which are obviously limiting the person's performance, as opposed to allowable weaknesses which don't interfere with the person's performance on the job. And then any other sources of interference, which are generally psychological barriers and blockers, including self-limiting assumptions and beliefs, low self-confidence, things like the imposter syndrome as well. For those of you who haven't heard of the imposter syndrome, that's where somebody basically is worried that they have a sort of a fear that they're going to get found out as not being good enough in their role. And you know, I've come across this on numerous occasions in coaching. So that could be an additional source of interference. We would see engaging coaching conversations as being very much focused around a more non-directive approach, so in other words, an ask approach, and also focused around strengths and solutions. That's going to result in, and research strongly shows that results in a more motivating coaching conversation. Whereas when the focus is on a tell approach, a more directive approach, and focused on weaknesses and problems and issues, that really results in a demotivating conversation a lot of the time, especially with good performers. So I think it's really important that the coach you know, reflects on where they are going into those conversations, and has conversations that are more kind of strengths-based and more focused on asking powerful coaching questions and listening and empathizing and reflecting back and so on. Just to introduce you very briefly to the strong business coaching process. So we have got a particular model that we use, or framework for coaching. Some of you might see some similarities with the GROW model. It does have similarities with the GROW model. It doesn't necessarily have to be sequential, but basically the way it works is, it typically works is, it's first of all about, you know, setting some goals, and you can see there that's really about finding out from the coaching client's perspective, the coachee's perspective, what would success look like. Then moving on to translating that into strategies. What could you do to get there? How are you going to get there? Whose help do you need? Whose support do you need? And so on. Then releasing productive strengths, which is how the person can use their strengths to help them achieve their goals. And then looking at overcoming performance risks. So these are the risk areas we talked about, the three types of risks. And it's finding out what might get in the way of the person achieving their goals, and how you can limit or reduce those risks. And by the way, the language of risk works extremely well in business, especially after the recent financial crisis, where there was a lot of talk about de-risking and managing risks and so on. And then moving on to obviously nurturing progress. This is really important. This is often something I think coaches forget about during their coaching sessions, and teams forget about when they're engaging in team coaching, which is to reflect on what's working really well. What have been some of the small shifts, the bigger changes, and appreciating those, recognizing those, learning from those, reflecting on those. So, for instance, in a lot of team coaching we get the team to reflect on successes and progress and learning from you know, the previous session that they've had. So these are sorts of things that I think are really important to build into. And then finally, gaining commitment. So, you know, are we going to do it? And by the way, we've got more than one question for each of these stages. We've got a whole bunch of questions, but this is just obviously a quick coaching guide that we offer up to managers. A very powerful quick coaching guide, because any manager can answer these questions, and we often use these questions in line manager coach training. What's really important as well, and some of you would have seen this, so apologies for those of you who have seen this, but for those of you who are new to this, we believe it's really important that coaching doesn't just look at behavior change. I think coaching that looks just at behavior change is superficial coaching. It also needs to tap into the emotional kind of elements and the mindset. So this is really about helping people understand where they are, and we've used this very powerfully for individual coaching, for team coaching, for peer coaching, and so on. where people can find out kind of where they are in terms of situational triggers that occur to them. So if for instance, organizations going through a big restructure and there's a headcount reduction or whatever the case may be, they might end up on the path of limitation. So they might end up mired in the weaknesses, the threats, the problems associated with that negative, what they regard as negative change, and that's going to give rise to a whole lot of negative emotion, narrowing of choices, which ultimately is going to lead to that sense of helplessness, disengagement, self-doubt. And there's huge risk, of course, the individual, the team, and the organization if they stay down there or they're there for too long. And so what clearly, our job is as a coach, or the job of a coach is to help them understand where they are and to move back up to that path of possibility. We've actually had organizations say to us, we want to stick this on the wall for people to look at as in the lobby as they come into work in the morning, just so they can be reminded that even if they've had a bad trip in on the tube or whatever, that they need to move back up to that path of possibility, because that's going to be beneficial to them, it's going to be beneficial to the team, and of course beneficial to the organization as well. We talked a little bit about stretch and the importance of stretch, and I just wanted to share this great quote with you, which illustrates the importance of stretch. People really look to do something challenging and worthwhile. People feel valued when they're doing something which is stretching. So I think it's important for the coach to help individuals identify relevant stretch opportunities and not just stay within their comfort zones. And there's different ways you can help people to stretch. The three ways that we typically are advocating areas and blockers, and the three specific strategies we typically advocate for dealing with these areas are around, first of all, using your own strength to compensate, which is a very empowering strategy because people recognize that they've got some strengths which they can leverage to overcome some of their risk areas. For example, somebody who was in an interview this morning with me was saying that she uses one of her strengths, which is around leading and delegation, developing others, to overcome a particular area of weakness around lack of kind of detail orientation. So that would be a good example of that. And it's also quite a good example of the next strategy, actually, which is using others' strength to compensate. So it's calling on other people who are different from yourself, surrounding yourself with people who've got different strengths from your own. And this works very powerfully in a team coaching context when we help teams understand each other's strengths. And then last but not least, sometimes you just have to be very intentional. You have to be very deliberate and form new habits and learn new habits. And it's not easy to learn new habits, of course, but once you practice those habits for 2 to 3 months, the research suggests that they become, kind of second nature after a while. So you achieve a level of unconscious competence around those. So you're competent that it comes quite easily to you. So how do we actually that's not going to bring about culture change throughout the organization. The organization is to supplement the executive coaching, that they brought up to speed in terms of some better coaching practices. Obviously, getting as many managers involved as possible. Also, to introduce team-based coaching, which is very, very powerful in our experience, and we're working with this a lot. Different organisations. We're going to share some of that with you actually. And then finally, last but not least, peer coaching is becoming increasingly kind of popular in organisations, and for good reason, because if you have a trained peer coaching facilitator who can facilitate those sessions, the peers can actually learn a hell of a lot from each other, and that can shift not just their behaviour but their mindset and their attitudes as well. This is from actually some work done by Results Coaching Systems, and I think this is very powerful because what it shows is the value of internal coaching. That one, if you train up one internal senior manager coach, that person will have an impact ratio of 38:1 in about 1 year. So what we're talking about here is if obviously you're training that person is able to coach their 10 direct reports, and if they themselves coach 2 to 5 people and they train them up to a proficient level, those people can then train up to about 25 direct reports. So it just gives you a rough indication in terms of the power of bringing the internal or developing internal capability around coaching in the organization to supplement the executive coaching. I don't think it's an either or, I think it's a both. So if you're wanting to create a coaching culture that's really going to shift, bring about culture change in the organization, then it's really important to not just use executive coaching, but the manager as coach training, the peer coaches, the coaching communities that we talked about, and those can be online or they can be face-to-face, obviously, communities, peer coaching groups meeting once a month or once every 2 months or whatever the case may be. So it's important to think about a shared distributed model of coaching if you're actually going to make an impact in terms of changing the culture. So what we want to do is we want to just share very briefly how are we doing for time, Patrick? I'm just trying to
50 minutes.
Yeah, 50 minutes left. I do want to leave some time for questions. So we want to share 2 examples with you of coaching that we've been doing, which has shifted the culture of the organization and resulted in significant improvements in the organization. So the first case study, I can name the client. The second case study, I can't name the client because they have a whole lot of issues around reputational risk and all the rest of it. So they're worried about any publicity of this sort of nature. So, which is often the case with clients. So what I'll do is I'll just talk you through then the first case study. So first case study was BOC, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to send you around a published paper which appeared in Coaching at Work about this case study. So over 16 months from the summer of 2013 to autumn 2014, Strengths Partnership worked with BOC to take 8 leadership teams ranging in number from 8 to 15 across various different functions in a coaching-led intervention, and that coaching was team coaching, and it was also executive coaching, one-on-one executive coaching for the team leaders, and we used the Strengths Scope tool to help team members understand their strengths, and we used a whole variety of strengths-based techniques to help bring about change in those teams. The coaching was evaluated, and the result, one of the results that was achieved was an average 65% improvement in overall team performance using managers' judgments of change in 5 key habit areas that were identified for improvement. And in fact, Vic Hart, the BOC UK and Ireland's head of HR, said the senior management teams have seen a real shift in performance through delivery of the team coaching interventions. We look forward to the ongoing development as they continue to apply the tools and methods they have learned during the team coaching. One of the things the BOC recognised was also shifts in engagement over that time, more positive culture being brought about as well, more collaborative culture, people working together more closely. And one of the particular exercises we used during the team coaching was the Call on Me activity that some of you may have used, where each member of the team offered one or more of the standout strengths to other team members, as well as committing to calling on other team members for one of their strengths, which would help them deliver their team goals. So it was really a process of sharing strengths with each other, so they could complement each other, and also asking very specifically for some support, and giving a clear indication of where they felt they could contribute to team goals. So those are very powerful conversations, what we call the Call on Me conversations. Another interesting aspect is that we at the end of each of the team sessions, in order to ensure the embedding of the learning, what we did is we ensured that observers from the team were identified. So these were one of the team members, who would then challenge openly any kind of old behaviours when they reappeared. So this is a good example of how you can actually embed the learning post the session. So these designated observers were tasked with, if you want, reviewing and evaluating, observing the performance of their peer group, and then providing some feedback. So it was just calling out those behaviours to make sure that people recognised when they were slipping into some of the old ways, which of course was about changing the culture, so changing the behaviour patterns in the organisation. So that's the BOC case study, and we will send this case study out to you. The other case study, which is a very interesting case study, and it's actually an ongoing case study, because we've been working with this organisation for a long time, about 4 years, and we've helped this organisation through not just coaching, but through leadership development and through development at different levels in the organisation, management development and so on as well, team development, lots of team development, to navigate through a very, very difficult time of change and transition and acquisition. A lot of the work has been around not just bringing in executive coaches to support some of the senior members, but also encouraging the team coaching, also encouraging open feedback, 360 feedback culture. So these are some of the sorts of things that we've been doing, a really kind of distributed model in this organisation of creating more of a coaching culture in that organisation. And the feedback has been very, very positive, and the organisation has seen some really good outcomes in terms of increased, again, engagement, collaboration, and change readiness. I think now the organisation recognises the importance of change readiness, and we've just been commissioned again to help them with some additional change readiness work. So these are the sorts of things that we've been working on with organisations in terms of using coaching as a key kind of intervention for culture change in organisations. But of course, lots of challenges do remain. One of the challenges is the pervasive, what we call organisational immune system. A lot of organisations are still very deficit-based. They're very geared around weaknesses and problems, and they think problem first. A lot of managers and leaders think problem first. Also, they think that they should know all the answers, and they should be able to tell people what the solutions are, rather than asking powerful questions. So that organizational immune system, is often very strong, and it fights against, if you want, kind of the new approach, the strengths-based approach, solution-focused approach, and so on. So, which is also why it's really important to adopt an inclusive approach, because if you just, for instance, working with the top leadership team, working with nobody else in the organization, then it's unlikely that you're ever going to bring about culture change in the organization. The second point is a really important one. There's still too much focus in HR, we believe, on standardization rather than inclusion and diversity, and adapting approaches and styles and coaching techniques and so on to the needs of different individuals. We still look for the easy solution, the one-size-fits-all solution, even though we know that research would suggest that it doesn't work. So there is still this focus on standardization, which is why competency-based systems are still very much the norm in organisations, although that's been challenged now and they're giving way to much more flexible strengths-based approaches. The third bullet there is an important one as well. There's a lot of discomfort and fear about focusing on strengths. People don't want to come across as big-headed. They don't want to come across as arrogant. They don't want to come across as complacent. So these sorts of things fly in the face of focusing on strengths often, as far as people are concerned. But once these conversations start happening, the dialogues start happening, it becomes much more natural. But it's really important, therefore, that the leaders are on board with all of this and that they're talking about their own strengths and as well as their vulnerabilities as well, their risk areas as well, because otherwise that won't set the right tone further down in the organisation, and people won't feel they've got the license to talk about their strengths. And finally, there is still a lack of research and proven methods because the whole strengths approach is new and it's exciting, it's evolving. There's a lot more research coming out now to show the power of it and that it does work. There's a lot more case studies, that can be cited now. But still, there's a lot of work to be There's a lot of work to be done in terms of, if you want, evidencing the value of this approach in terms of driving organizational kind of outcome indicators as well as behavior change in coaching clients. So that's all I wanted to cover. Any questions? What we'll do is now we'll unmute you and we can take some questions if there are any questions. Or any comments or any examples.
Everyone's coached out, James.
Any questions before we close? Oh.
Or even, again, do use the chat box, or we can follow this up.
I'd love to just hear your comments and thoughts as well about what you've heard. Or any additional insights that you'd like to share.
Hi, it's Jackie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Jackie, we can hear you. Yeah. Sarah, we're going to see if we can unmute you. For some reason you still...
Everyone should be unmuted.
Everyone should be unmuted, but I'm going to try and unmute you again. There we go. Sarah, so you... Yeah. Jackie, you had a comment.
It seems to be having a...
I think we've got a bit of a problem in terms of sound. Let's have a quick look. Oh, that's great. Catch. Yeah, that's really good. Let me just read this quick comment for you. There's a few good comments coming in here. One comment, I find I can use the mode with a few individuals. I'm not often coming in at high enough level of influence, so I try to create small winning teams in the hope they become infectious. That's great. It's really, that's really what it's about. So it's about seeding the approach in, creating the coaching culture, and allowing it to go viral. So that's excellent. Sarah, do you want to type your comment in? Sorry, for what reason?
You might be able to hear me. Can you hear me?
Ah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. No, I just thought I'd wait. There's a process here of putting your hand up, which I was trying to use slightly.
All right. Okay.
Just for a second. Anyway, I just wanted to say.
Yeah, you're pretty advanced. Yeah, you're more advanced than.
Sorry.
Hi, Sarah.
I just wanted to say I really liked the comprehensiveness of the model that you presented. Recognize, moving coaching from being just a kind of two-person dyad interaction or process into something that is capable of, influencing a whole organisational culture. And I think although I've seen your models before, I've not had the opportunity to hear you talking about them, like the two paths and the various sort of scales of escalation. And it's just really encouraging to think how much purposeful, positive, strength-based conversation between people, just in twos mostly, although I'm sure it expands beyond that, can change the culture of an organisation over time.
That's great, Sarah, and I know you've got a lot of experience around appreciative inquiry and have written some books on that as well, so that people might want to kind of explore that, because I think, coaching by itself is not going to, necessarily bring about kind of significant cultural change, but if you use it with some of these other approaches, whether it's appreciative inquiry, or World Cafe methodologies and so on, that's more likely to bring about significant culture change. So I think we shouldn't necessarily see it as a panacea, but certainly it's one key mechanism to bring about culture change. So I'd encourage people to explore Sarah's work as well. And we can maybe get that out, and we'll send that out, Sarah, if you're okay with that, in the follow-up email.
Thank you. That is very kind of you. And I guess listening, what those things have in common with coaching is this whole thing about the importance of dialogue in organisations when people are trying to change things, which can be overlooked as a kind of precursor to action, as opposed to being a mediating factor in itself.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's right. And it's not top-down dialogue. It's kind of organic, evolving dialogue. Getting everyone involved, or as many people as possible. I've got a comment here from Kerry. My experience is that many senior people are still of the mindset that coaching is about remediation and therefore avoid being coached at all costs. Kerry, absolutely. I think this is what we see and hear as well. And what we try to do is always ensure that the top team have some sort of briefing session at the outset, even if they don't go through specific training themselves. They have some sort of briefing session to help them understand the benefits of not just coaching, but a more strengths and solutions-based approach to coaching, and the research around that to help them understand how that can deliver real value to the business. And of course, linking that with how a positive culture can deliver value to the business, because there's lots and lots of great research out there from some very credible bodies and organizations like, the Booz research I was sharing with you earlier, the Hay research, PwC research, Deloitte research, and so on. And it all points in the same direction, which is why it makes good business sense to focus on building a positive culture and building a coaching culture. Okay. Just one final comment from Catherine. Catherine, very often the power of the tool is its practical application. It makes sense to coachees and builds confidence. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Catherine. Yep. And as I say, we'll send you some follow-up material as well in terms of the strong business coaching framework.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, thanks so much for that, James. So sorry we had a little bit of obviously technical difficulties, definitely at the beginning, but it seems to have been okay throughout the majority of that. What we'll do is we'll make sure the recording and the slide deck and everything is followed up, as well as the BIT case study, and there's a few other materials that we wanted. Please complete the post-webinar questionnaire. This is really important to get your real take on that, and there's some additional next steps that we can pick up from that. And also, obviously, the team here will be following up and making sure that we can pick up the conversation directly with you, as always. But other than that, yeah, so thanks so much for spending some time with us. I hope it was useful. And yeah, hope to see you on the next webinar.
Thank you all. Yeah, love to hear your feedback as well. So we'll send a survey out after the webinar.
Brilliant.
Take care. Have a nice weekend.